NASA found a huge hole on Mars that could lead deep underground and possibly hide signs of life. The gaping pit is about 300 feet wide and is located in a bizarre area full of voids and openings. Most of them are shallow, but one hole stands out. It looks much deeper and seems to break through into a lower level of the planet. The origin of this pit is still unclear. Could it be an ancient civilization that built an underground city to live inside the planet? Scientists think something more powerful could have created it. One of the main ideas is that a meteor crashed into Mars and punched through the surface, leaving this deep opening behind. This hole is especially interesting for us because it might connect to a huge system of tunnels or caves. In there, conditions are much safer than on the surface, which is extremely cold, full of radiation, and often hit by dust storms. That's one of the reasons why those underground spaces could protect and possibly support life. This makes them one of the best places to search for it on Mars. Billions of years ago, Mars was likely much more like Earth, with conditions that allowed life to develop there, but over time the planet changed a lot. These days, Mars does not have a strong magnetic field or a thick atmosphere. This means its surface is exposed to fatal radiation from space and the sun. This radiation is powerful enough to wipe out any living organisms. So if life still exists on Mars, it's more likely to be hiding underground. Places like deep caves can act like natural shelters since they can block radiation and keep conditions more stable. One day, we might build the first human base on Mars inside an old inactive volcano. Old volcanoes on Mars might have long tunnels called lava tubes. They formed when hot lava flowed and then cooled, leaving empty spaces inside the rock. These tunnels could protect astronauts from radiation and extreme conditions, making them a good place to live and work. In 2019, scientists from the USGS Astrogeology Science Center created a map showing more than 1,000 possible cave entrances on Mars. But scientists still don't know how deep those caves go or how large they are. At the moment, NASA uses rovers and satellites to explore Mars. But in the future, astronauts might be able to study those underground areas more closely. These missions could search for signs of life, such as tiny fossils or chemical traces left by past organisms.
The red, parched earth under your feet is shaking. Large cracks are opening in the ground, threatening to swallow you. But unlike on Earth, these quakes aren't coming from within the planet. A threat coming from space is triggering them. Scientists have made a shocking discovery about Mars quakes. By using AI and NASA's InSight data, they found out that some of those tremors are caused by meteorite impacts. It means that Mars gets hit 2.5 times more often than we thought, and new craters are forming all the time. But the scariest part is that these impacts don't just shake the ground. They send powerful shock waves deep into the planet, revealing a hidden seismic highway and an unstable interior, unlike anything we imagined. This changes everything we thought we knew about Mars. So now, the big question is, what else is lurking beneath the surface? But let's follow scientists' train of thought first. They took Marsquake data from NASA's InSight lander and compared it with fresh impact craters spotted by the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter. That's when they discovered that some impacts create a seismic highway through the mantle instead of being absorbed by the crust. Even though NASA shut down InSight in 2022, its data is still precious. The lander, which placed a seismometer on Mars, recorded over 1,300 Marsquakes, some caused by underground rock cracking under heat and pressure, others, apparently, by meteoroids slamming into the surface of the red planet. By studying how seismic waves move through the crust, mantle, and core, scientists keep piecing together Mars's deep structure. In the past, researchers already linked impact craters with seismic data. But these new studies are the first time when a fresh impact has been connected to quakes detected in Cerberus fossae. That's a highly active region 1,000 miles away from InSight. Scientists have discovered this 71-foot-wide crater much farther from NASA's InSight lander than expected, if we consider the strength of the seismic waves it produced. Mars's crust was thought to absorb most of the energy from impacts, which would limit how far seismic waves could travel. But the analysis of this crater revealed that, instead of getting dampened, the waves took a more direct and deeper path through the planet's mantle. This unexpected finding suggests that Mars has a seismic highway, which allows quakes to spread much farther than previously believed. Now, the InSight team will need to reassess their models of Mars' internal composition and structure. And then, we might better understand how impact-generated seismic signals can reach such depths. Manually sorting through the vast amount of data would have taken years. But luckily, these days, there are new tools, and scientists can go from tens of thousands of images to just a few in a matter of days. So, researchers focused on finding craters within approximately 1,800 miles of InSight's location. Their aim was to identify those that formed while the lander's seismometer was active. By comparing before and after images from the context camera over time, they identified 123 fresh craters to cross-reference with InSight's seismic data. Out of those, 49 craters were potential matches for quakes detected by InSight's seismometer. And after conducting some more analysis, the team decided that the 71-foot Cerberus fossae impact crater was the main finding. This discovery is likely to help scientists differentiate between signals from internal quakes and those caused by meteoroid impacts. Initially, they believed that Cerberus fossae produced a lot of high-frequency seismic signals linked to quakes originating inside Mars. But the new data suggests that some of this activity may have been caused by impacts, not internal processes. Another mystery scientists haven't been able to crack for 50 years is why Mars is split into two very different halves. But thanks to recordings of Marsquakes, they may have finally found the answer. Since the 1970s, researchers have known that Mars has two distinct regions. The northern lowlands cover about two-thirds of the planet's northern hemisphere, and the southern highlands make up the rest. The southern highlands sit about 3 miles higher than the northern lowlands, and the crust, the planet's outer layer, like a shell, is thicker in the south. This strange divide is known as the Martian dichotomy. There are two potential explanations for this imbalance. One theory suggests that an unknown internal process within Mars created the difference. The other claims that a massive collision, probably with a moon-sized space rock or several smaller impacts, once reshaped the planet's surface. But Mars' surface is extremely old. That's why pinpointing exactly what happened has been difficult. But now, a new study, published on December 27, 2024, has used Marsquake data from NASA's InSight lander to figure out whether the cause of this difference lies deep inside the planet. InSight was positioned near the boundary between the northern lowlands and southern highlands. Its mission included recording seismic data from Marsquakes, which travel through the planet's mantle, the rock layer beneath the crust. So scientists compared how these waves moved under both lowlands and highlands. They looked for differences in the planet's deep interior. It turns out that the seismic waves lost energy much faster when traveling through the southern highlands. It means that the mantle beneath this region is significantly hotter than in the north. It's compelling evidence that internal planetary forces, rather than an external impact, caused Mars' unusual split. The research team believes that the temperature difference between Mars' two halves can be traced back to ancient tectonic activity. It once shaped the planet, but later stopped. At some point in the past, Mars had moving tectonic plates, like Earth's. As these plates shifted, they, along with the molten rock beneath them, could have created the Martian dichotomy. But eventually, the movement stopped, leaving behind what scientists call a stagnant lid. That's a thick, immobile layer over the planet's molten interior. If this turns out to be true, it might mean that the mantle beneath the southern highlands is still pushing upward, while the mantle under the northern lowlands is sinking deeper toward the planet's core. This ongoing process could explain why Mars' crust is thicker in the south. At the same time, we can't completely rule out the idea that an external impact created the dichotomy. Some recent studies suggest that a giant collision could still be a possible explanation. To solve this mystery for good, scientists will need more Marsquake data and detailed models of how Mars originally formed. By the way, if you ever decide to visit Mars, you might come across the hero of our video today, the InSight lander itself. It was supposed to launch in March 2016, but a problem with one of its instruments caused a delay. It was a vacuum leak in the seismometer. NASA rescheduled the launch for May 2018, and the issue was fixed in the meantime. But this delay increased the total cost from $675 million to $830 million. Still, InSight successfully landed on Mars on November 26, 2018. But over time, dust built up on its solar panels, making it harder to recharge. The InSight lander runs on solar panels and batteries, but it needs occasional wind gusts, called cleaning events, to clear dust from the panels. Unfortunately, the place where InSight landed didn't get enough of these winds to keep the lander fully powered. By February 2021, during the Martian winter, thick dust had covered the panels, and they were only producing 27% of their full capacity. To save power, NASA started putting InSight into hibernation mode, shutting down instruments gradually to keep its electronics warm. They hoped better weather would allow the lander to recharge and wake up by July 2021. In May 2021, the team found a clever way to restore some power by using the lander's arm to move sand onto the panels, helping the wind clean off some of the dust. But eventually, InSight was only generating 1/10 of the power from the sunlight than it did right upon arrival. In July 2022, NASA put it in low-power mode to keep detecting Marsquakes. The lander kept operating until December 2022. On December 20th, NASA announced that InSight had lost contact with Earth on December 15th, and the mission officially ended on December 21st, 2022.
This planet looks lifeless. Lifeless, brick red, and very, very dry, like a desert. But only until you reach one of the poles of the red planet. That's where you come across a seemingly endless ice cap. So, if you've been imagining Mars as an extremely dry place, you might need to change your opinion. Scientists think there could have been a lot of water on Mars in the past. What makes them think so? They found loads of ancient river valley networks and lake beds on the surface of the red planet. Plus, on Mars, there are minerals and rocks that could have only formed in liquid water. Mars might even have experienced terrible floods 3.5 billion years ago. These days, there's still some water on the red planet. It's true that Mars's atmosphere is too thin for this water to stay in its liquid form on the surface of the planet. But under the surface, it's a different matter. You can find water under the surface of the planet in its polar regions. The only place where this water is visible is at the North Polar ice cap. Also, sometimes, salty water flows down crater walls and hillsides, and there are tiny quantities of water in the planet's atmosphere, but it only exists as vapor. Anyway, now that we know for sure there is liquid water on Mars, could we probably use this water during a human-operated mission to the red planet? This way, the spaceship coming from Earth wouldn't have to bring its own water. It would make its cargo way, way lighter, which, in turn, would decrease the cost of the mission. The spaceship would just need to take enough water to get to the red planet and bring along the equipment astronauts will need to filter Martian water to make it drinkable. But it's not all sunshine and rainbows. The main problem is that the water found on Mars is salty. It might even be as salty as the oceans on our own planet. But these salts aren't what you can find on Earth. If a person consumed a certain amount of them, they would be highly toxic to the human body. On our planet, these salts are formed as byproducts of rocket fuel, as well as in road flares and fireworks. Naturally, they only occur in very dry areas. If there are no particular bacteria to break them down, these substances accumulate year after year, and their concentration in water is constantly increasing. But in theory, it's possible to purify even such water. The process of filtration could help the astronauts get rid of 90% of harmful substances. Then, they could use a UV disinfection unit. This would also help to get rid of any foreign microbes, if there are any, that might be hiding in the water. This stage would not only protect the astronauts, but also prevent them from bringing any dormant Martian microbes back to Earth. In other words, future travelers to Mars shouldn't have too many problems with drinking water on the red planet, but only if they bring the right purification equipment that can deal with any water quality. Because however bad running out of water in the middle of a desert is, experiencing it on another planet sounds much more terrifying. Now, I've got another question. If there is water on Mars, might there be other worlds in our solar system where we can find water? Sure, let's visit some of them. We'll start with Europa, one of the largest moons of Jupiter. Astronomers consider Europa one of the most promising places in the solar system to search for new life forms. All because this moon has a huge saltwater ocean with a depth of 40 to 100 miles. Yes, it is hidden under a layer of ice that is estimated to be from 10 to 20 miles thick. But it is still potentially habitable. Astronomers claim that plumes of water erupt from cracks in the ice shell and release the contents of the moon's ocean into space. There's also some evidence that the ocean might have warm water radiating from the moon's equator, which also means there could be not just life, but complex life on Europa. Well, I guess we'll find all about it in 2030 when NASA's Europa Clipper will reach the satellite and conduct its own investigation. And we're moving on to Enceladus, Saturn's moon. People have known about this tiny sleepy world since 1789. The diameter of the moon is a mere 310 miles, but despite its small size, it's one of the most intriguing places in our solar system because it too is likely to host a warm and salty liquid ocean. Watery eruptions happen on Enceladus rather regularly. The moon spews from its ice geysers more than 1,000 tons of water every hour. This water is mixed with organic molecules, salt, and other substances. Astronomers think that the ocean might be warm thanks to the tidal influence of Saturn. The planet's tug may cause hydrothermal activity, warming the oceans. There are also places in the solar system that might have water on their surface, but its presence hasn't been confirmed yet. For example, Ganymede, another moon of Jupiter. It's the largest moon in the solar system. It's even bigger than Mercury. Astronomers have long believed there is an ocean beneath the 100-mile thick ice crust covering the moon. And in 2015, Ganymede's aurorae activity also hinted that this ocean could be warm and salty. Unlike on Europa, ice geyser activity on Ganymede hasn't been spotted yet. The reason might be a much greater distance between Jupiter and Ganymede than that between the gas giant and Europa. Also, there are the maybes. Those are worlds where there seems to be water, but we don't know to what extent it is liquid. One of such places is Callisto, which, have you guessed it, is another of Jupiter's moons. It's pretty far from its parent planet and also doesn't get as much radiation as other moons. Plus, it has a magnetic field, which definitely adds some protection. Astronomers claim there is water in this faraway world, but the moon's lack of geological activity might mean that it can't have an ocean without some kind of space antifreeze. In other words, all that water on Jupiter's satellite can be a huge, and I mean huge, chunk of ice. Now, let's visit another space body, but this time, it's not a moon, but a dwarf planet. Look, this is Ceres. Even though people have known about it since 1801, its small size made it difficult to study. Until not so long ago, this space body was considered to be a rocky world. But after the Dawn spacecraft arrived at Ceres in 2015 and examined the dwarf planet, a new theory appeared. Ceres might be less of a rocky ball and more of a watery planet covered with an icy mantle and a slushy ocean moving beneath. If it's true, Ceres could become the nearest to Earth world with an ocean. Titan is Saturn's largest moon. It has some of the most abundant pools of liquid in the solar system. Its surface is a slurry of water ice and ice made of lots of different compounds, for example, hydrocarbons. The satellite also has dense clouds that regularly burst with rain. And if you visited this place, you'd see rivers, lakes, and an ocean made up of methane and ethane hiding under the icy crust. Now let's talk about poor Pluto, which has changed its status a couple of times. When NASA's New Horizons flew by the dwarf planet in 2015, it discovered a hint of something totally unexpected: an ocean. Pluto is an icy world, but there are two things that make scientists think that Pluto might have once hosted an ocean. First, a theory that Pluto and its 5 moons could have been formed out of the same materials after a powerful collision. And second, the tidal forces between Pluto and its largest moon, Charon. Even better, this leaves open the possibility that the ocean is still around. We just need more time to examine the dwarf planet.
It looks like a regular beach, but something sets off an alarm blaring in your head. The sand looks too red, the sun is too bright, the wind is all wrong, it's hard to breathe, and there's no water in the ocean. Well, panic not, it's normal, since you're on Mars. For the longest time, we've seen Mars as a dry, lifeless dust ball, a freezing desert where water exists only as ice or vapor. But new research suggests that billions of years ago, it was a totally different place. And instead of endless dust, it may have had something much more familiar to us: sunny, sandy beaches. Scientists from Penn State, UC Berkeley, and Guangzhou University studied radar data from China's Zhurong rover. It started to roll across Mars in 2021. While exploring the surface of the red planet, it found sloping rock formations that looked strikingly similar to the ones found on Earth's coastlines. Those are called foreshore deposits. They form when waves push sand onto a shoreline. But Zhurong wasn't just taking pretty pictures. It also had ground-penetrating radar, a tool that allowed it to scan deep below the Martian surface as it traveled 1.2 miles between May 2021 and May 2022. And it found something pretty wild: layers of sediment sloping down at a 15-degree angle. This pattern is identical to the ones left behind by waves on Earth. And this wasn't from the wind, volcanoes, or anything else. It just looked like a real beach. And that's actually a big deal. Because if there were waves and tides, there must have been a large body of water. That means Mars may have once had just the right conditions for hosting life. Even after 3.5 billion years, the formations are still incredibly similar to beaches on Earth. So there must have been a time when Mars was much more than just a dusty rock in space. After revealing this shocking news, Zhurong's radar scanned 260 feet deep into the ground, discovering sediment layers. They once formed along a path perpendicular to an ancient shoreline, the one that likely existed 4 billion years ago. At the same time, it might not be all that surprising. Back then, Mars wasn't the dry, frozen wasteland we see today. It had a thicker atmosphere, a warmer climate, and plenty of liquid water. And I'm not even talking about some tiny puddle. Beaches don't form without a massive body of water. For waves to shape the land like this, there had to be rivers flowing into a vast ocean. Powerful currents had to be moving sand around, and water had to stick around for a long time. This couldn't be just a brief wet spell. It was a period where Mars was hydrologically active for millions of years, potentially being a place where life could have thrived. This discovery gives even more weight to one theory. It has been puzzling scientists since the 1970s. That's when NASA's Viking spacecraft snapped images of what looked like a shoreline wrapping around Mars's northern hemisphere. But there was a problem. The shoreline was all over the place, with elevations varying by up to 6 miles. Wow, which is nothing like our flat, mostly consistent shorelines we see on Earth. This difference made scientists doubt that a Martian ocean ever existed. For years, scientists have been trying to crack this mystery. In 2007, they suggested that Mars' rotation actually shifted billions of years ago. As the planet's massive Tharsis volcanic region grew, the planet's spin axis tilted, warping the surface. It could explain why the shoreline is so uneven today. In other words, what once was a flat and level landscape got distorted over time. Interestingly, Mars has been dropping hints about its watery past for years. Curiosity found ancient ripples in Gale Crater. There were signs of a long-gone lake. Perseverance is currently studying a fossilized river delta in Jezero Crater. Now, with Zhurong's evidence of an ancient ocean, it all comes together. Small lakes? Check. Rivers? Check. A massive ocean covering the northern lowlands? Quite possibly. Zhurong's mission wrapped up in May 2022 after dust blocked its solar panels, but future missions could still explore those ancient shoreline deposits. Scientists might send new missions to drill deeper into the ground to retrieve samples. Or we could use better radar to map Mars' subsurface in more detail. There's a real hope to excavate those areas in the future and find even more clues about Mars' past. At the same time, NASA's Perseverance rover is already working hard in Jezero crater collecting samples. Scientists hope that it will bring them back to Earth in the 2030s. While those won't include samples from the ancient ocean, they could still help us find out more about Mars' wetter history. For now, the discovery of ancient beaches on Mars gives us a peek into a time when the planet might have looked a lot more like Earth, with water, waves, and rivers. Now let's speak about the Perseverance rover that's still working on Mars in more detail. It has a special drill on its arm and uses it to scrape off the dust and top layers of rock, making small 2-inch wide circles in Jezero crater. Once, one of its cameras took a close-up photo, and the image showed that the rock wasn't smooth. It was made of tiny interlocking crystals. The rover used 2 special tools to analyze the rock's chemistry. The results confirmed that the rock, named Rochette, was volcanic. It meant it formed from lava or magma, not from mud and clay, like scientists had expected from a former lakebed. Perseverance, also known as Percy, landed on Mars in February 2021, along with a small helicopter named Ingenuity. It is the most advanced rover ever sent to Mars, following in the footsteps of Curiosity, Spirit, Opportunity, and others. But Percy has a different mission. While older rovers mainly studied Martian rocks and climate, Perseverance is searching for signs of past life. Scientists chose Jezero crater because it looks like it used to be a lake where tiny life forms could have lived. The rover drills, scrapes, and collects rock samples to study with its science tools. It also saves some samples to bring back to Earth in the future for even closer study. Perseverance has found some surprising things on Mars. Scientists studying the data it sent back have discovered that Jezero crater has changed a lot over time. Long ago, this area had flowing lava, a lake that lasted for thousands of years, rivers that carried mud and sand, and even massive floods that brought in rocks from far away. It means that Jezero's history is more active and unpredictable than scientists expected. This definitely made it harder to find the sedimentary rocks they were looking for. But it has also revealed new places where ancient life might have existed. Another exciting discovery is that every rock Perseverance has studied so far contains carbon-based materials, the same stuff that life on Earth is built from. NASA's Perseverance rover also carries a special tool called MOXIE, which has managed to make oxygen from the carbon dioxide in Mars' atmosphere for the first time. Over 16 test runs, MOXIE produced about 4 ounces of oxygen. That's enough to keep an astronaut breathing for about 4 hours. It worked even better than expected, making up to 0.42 ounces of oxygen per hour. After running successfully for 2 years, MOXIE completed its final test in September 2023. It brings us one step closer to sending humans to Mars in the future. In any case, back to the discovery of ancient shorelines on Mars. This finding might help us see the red planet with new eyes. Water might have been flowing across its surface for tens of millions of years, carving out lakes, rivers, and even a vast ocean. What else have we misunderstood? Did Martian dinos stroll across the vast green valleys of the planet? Or were those bizarre marine creatures the likes of which we can't even imagine? Well, we don't know yet, but one thing is very likely. Mars had an era of warmth, water, and maybe life. Have we found another civilization? Is that a door to someone's home on another planet? Can we peek through the windows? After all, it was NASA's Curiosity rover that sent this image to Earth, and right now, this rover is exploring the surface of Mars. Unfortunately, astronomers were fast to disappoint us. They claimed that it was just a natural part of the Martian landscape. There are several clues that made them think it wasn't a real door. For example, it's tiny, a mere 3 feet high. But it might simply mean the Martians aren't that tall, you may object. But scientists keep insisting that what looks like a door is actually an opening in a rock created by natural forces, like winds and erosion. The thing is, If you look at the rock attentively, you may notice strata, the layers of silt that stand out because they're harder than the surrounding material. These strata dip here on the left and a bit higher on the right. They likely appeared around 4 billion years ago in a river or a wind-blown dune. Since the strata became visible, powerful Martian winds have eroded them even more, and now you can see that they disappear inside the door. And look at this. See those cracks? Yeah, those. That's how rocks weather on the red planet. This small cave probably formed when several fractures crossed the strata. A pretty large boulder might have fallen out under its own weight, and this created the door-shaped opening. Now, this theory is quite plausible, because even though the gravity on Mars isn't as strong as on Earth, it's still strong enough to do it. Besides, see that rock to the right of the opening? It has a suspiciously smooth vertical edge. It must be the culprit. It probably fell out not so long ago, and Martian winds haven't got rid of it yet. And winds on Mars can be exceptionally powerful. This planet is infamous for its intense dust storms. Sometimes they kick up so much dust that you can see it through a telescope on Earth. Such storms occur every year and cover continent-sized areas. They also last for weeks at a time. But besides these annual storms, there are even larger storms that happen much more rarely, but they're more powerful and way more intense. Those are called global dust storms because they encircle the entire planet. But even if you got caught in the most severe storm on Mars, it wouldn't be as terrible as you might think. The wind speed on the worst Martian storms reaches 60 miles an hour tops. Hurricane-force winds on our planet can be twice that speed. You should also keep in mind that the atmosphere on the red planet is 1% as dense as the atmosphere on Earth. That's why, if you decided to fly a kite on Mars, you'd need the wind to be much faster than on Earth. Otherwise, you wouldn't even be able to get the kite in the air. In other words, even though it's quite windy on Mars, it doesn't feel as intense as on our home planet. Oh, by the way, you might have noticed I keep calling Mars the red planet. Why? Look, our neighbor is covered in dust, soil, and rock that is rich in iron oxide. That's what gives the surface of the planet its trademark red hue. And look, there's the trademark. Nah, just kidding. Mars is the fourth planet from the Sun. Not so far away from the star, you might say, and still, it's a cold and deserted world. The average temperature on its surface is minus 81 degrees Fahrenheit. But if you ever visit one of its poles during the wintertime, bring a lot of warm clothing, because the temperatures are likely to drop to minus 220 degrees there. In the summer, though, you might feel very comfortable in some regions. There, the temperatures can rise to 70 degrees, not very different from what we're used to. Mars is one of the most explored space bodies in the solar system. At the moment, NASA has 2 rovers roaming the red landscapes, Curiosity and Perseverance. There's also one lander called InSight and helicopter Ingenuity, nicknamed Ginny. Perseverance is the most advanced and largest rover ever sent to another world. The journey to the red planet took 203 days, and Ginny traveled to Mars attached to the belly of Perseverance. Sounds cozy. And now, I'm going to tell you something really curious. Let's say you're a Babylonian who lived around 5,000 years ago. Babylonia was an empire in ancient Mesopotamia. Just think back to 6th grade. Anyway, your neighbor comes up to you and says, "What day is it today?" And what do you answer? "It's Mars Day." Wait, what? When the ancient Babylonians created the week, they decided to divide it into 7 parts. Each day got named after some space body, like the Moon, the Sun, Venus, and so on. Mars Day was on Tuesday. The Babylonians believed that each of these space objects influenced their lives on the day named after it. And since Mars was red in color, they associated it with aggression. That's why on Tuesdays they had special ceremonies to avoid the influence of the unfriendly planet. Indeed, Mars might seem unfriendly to a tired traveler. Its atmosphere is very thin. Its volume is a near 1% of the atmosphere on Earth. In other words, there's 99% less air to breathe on the red planet. Mars's atmosphere is mostly made up of carbon dioxide. At such high concentrations, it's toxic for us humans. And if you were looking for some oxygen to breathe on Mars, you'd come away empty-handed. There's only 0.1% of oxygen in the air on the red planet. That's definitely not enough for you to survive there. At the moment, Mars has two moons, Deimos and Phobos. Astronomers think they may be asteroids once caught in the gravitational field of the planet. The moons are shaped like potatoes. That's because their mass is too little for gravity to give them a spherical form. Potatoes, eh? Maybe they should be renamed mashed and au gratin. One day, Mars will get a ring of its own. It might happen in the next 20 to 40 million years. Will Brightside be there? Stay tuned. Mars's gravitational forces will tear apart the planet's largest moon, Phobos. Hey, it really will get mashed. Some chunks of the former moon will crash into Mars, and others will break apart and create the ring around the planet. This ring might exist for at least 100 million years. The surface of Mars is cut by a huge canyon system known as Valles Marineris. Sounds like a pasta sauce. If it were on Earth, it'd stretch all the way from New York to California, over 3,000 miles. At its widest part, the largest canyon on Mars is 200 miles, and it reaches 4 miles at its deepest point. If you still have difficulties imagining the sheer size of this natural phenomenon, here you go. Valles Marineris is 10 times the size of the Grand Canyon on Earth. Now, since we're on the subject of gigantic things, let's talk about Olympus Mons. This is the largest volcano in the solar system, and it's on Mars too. It's 3 times as tall as Mount Everest on our planet, and that's the tallest mountain above sea level. And the base of Olympus Mons is as large as the state of New Mexico. Now, scientists think there could have been water on Mars in the past. What made them think so? They found lots of ancient river valley networks and lake beds on the surface of the red planet. Plus, on Mars, there are minerals and rocks that could only form in liquid water. Mars might even have experienced terrible floods 3.5 billion years ago. These days, there's still some water on the red planet, but Mars's atmosphere is too thin for this water to stay in its liquid form on the surface. Now, it only exists in the form of water ice. You can find it just under the surface of the planet in its polar regions. The only place where this water is visible is at the North Polar Ice Cap. Also, sometimes, salty water flows down crater walls and hillsides, and there are tiny quantities of water in the planet's atmosphere, but it only exists as vapor. So, as a vacation spot, I think I'll pass.
On Mars, nothing is ordinary. That's why a single rock spotted by NASA's Perseverance rover in Jezero Crater has drawn everyone's attention. Its surface is covered with tiny spheres. This texture is both bizarre and weirdly, painfully familiar. Haven't we seen something similar on Earth? Yes, we have. Does it mean there's a mysterious connection between Earth and the red planet? NASA's Perseverance rover has been busy exploring Mars, and on August 5, 2025, it spotted something unusual. A rock that looks like it came straight out of a medieval armory. It looks like a knight's helmet forgotten after a battle. Or maybe it's the hat of a witch that crash-landed on the red planet. Researchers officially nicknamed the rock Horniflya. It has a dome-shaped top with a pointed tip and a rim that flares out. Its surface is rough and covered with tiny bumps. But the coolest thing is that the rock isn't just lumpy. It's made up almost entirely of little round spheres. Imagine bubble wrap that someone balled up and spray-painted Mars red. Here you go. Geologists aren't too impressed by the rock's shape, but its composition makes them raise their eyebrows. Such little spheres could have formed in a few days. Chemical weathering, volcanic activity, or if rock vaporized by a meteorite cooled down and condensed. On Earth, rocks with similar textures sometimes come from processes involving water, and this is one of the reasons why everyone is so excited now. If underground waters had a hand in shaping the rock, it could mean there was a lot of water on Mars in the past. And water means life. Now, another cool thing about this helmet is that it's a floating rock. The term means that it looks completely different from those around it. Basically, this rock doesn't belong to the area where the rover found it. The best guess is that it was launched from another location. Maybe it was a volcanic eruption, or more likely, an asteroid smacked into the Martian surface and flung it across the landscape. Interestingly, this isn't the first bubble rock Perseverance has seen. Back in March 2025, it found another sphere-covered rock. and some of the tiny balls had holes in them. If you look closely at Horniflia, you can see a bunch of those too. That might mean they're what geologists call ooids, small spherical layered grains. On Earth, ooids form when calcium carbonate builds up layer by layer in shallow water. Picture a warm, shallow sea near the equator. The water is a little choppy and waves are constantly moving things around. That's the kind of place ooids are born. They grow like pearls in oysters. An ooid starts small, usually with a tiny grain of sand or some other speck. The water is overloaded with calcium carbonate, so every time the waves move that grain around, a new layer builds up. Over time, the layers pile on, and you've got yourself a neat little ball. Sometimes the center isn't as tough as the layers surrounding it. That's why the core can dissolve or even disappear completely, leaving behind a hole. If those Martian spheres formed in the same way, this might be the reason why they have those tiny cavities inside them. But there's another possibility. On Earth, the other way of ooid formation is biological. In other words, they sometimes start with the remains of tiny living organisms. Could the ooids on the red planet have formed in the same way? Of course. This doesn't mean we can slap a "Life Found on Mars" headline on it just yet. But the fact that these holes exist is a clue that hints that Mars might have had the right kind of conditions for life. Well, maybe not seashells and oysters, but definitely something worth paying attention to. Weird Earth-like formations aren't the only intriguing things found on Mars. In March 2025, NASA's Perseverance rover spotted something that looked like a bunch of tiny spider eggs. That something was made up of hundreds of little round balls stuck together. It was just sitting there on a hill called Witch Hazel, near the edge of Jezero crater. On closer inspection, it turned out to be a weirdly shaped rock with a bit of red Martian dust on it. Yeah, sadly, or luckily, those weren't Martian spider eggs. Even so, the formation really stood out from everything else around it. The Perseverance team named the weird rock St. Paul's Bay. It's a floating rock too, just like Horniflia. Something once moved this rock from its original spot. One theory claims that it could have been created when a meteorite smashed into Mars. The powerful impact must have blasted rocks into the air. Then, those bits could have cooled down and formed those tiny balls. If that's true, the rock might have come from really far away. Another cool find occurred in April 2023 when NASA's Curiosity rover took a little break from searching for signs of ancient water on Mars and stumbled upon a travel book. Later, scientists figured out that it wasn't really a book, just a rock, but it does look like a little hardcover with a page frozen mid-turn. This book rock is tiny, measuring only about 1 inch wide. In February 2022, the Curiosity rover spotted something that could only be described as a tiny flower made of minerals. It looked like little coral branches, but it was actually a mineral deposit. Pretty rare to see in a flower-like shape. Most of these kinds of deposits form when ancient water mixes with rocks on the Martian surface, so they're not exactly new to scientists. But that one was unique, since it looked like a tiny plant or flower. In January 2023, the University of Arizona shared another bizarre image, a rock formation on Mars that looked like the face of a giant teddy bear. It had two distinct beady eyes, a button nose, and an upturned mouth. It was captured by NASA's Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, which was orbiting the red planet at the time. Scientists from the University of Arizona explained that the teddy bear face was likely just a natural formation, like a broken up hill or mound in the center of an ancient crater. But let's get back to Horniflia. Perseverance snapped that strange bumpy rock photo during its 234th week on Mars, and NASA even picked it as the rover's best shot of the week. Of course, the rover's main job isn't collecting cool-looking rocks. Perseverance was launched on July 30th, 2020 with a big goal: to search for traces of ancient microbial life and figure out if Mars was ever truly habitable. That mission is connected directly to NASA's Artemis program. It's focused on setting up a long-term base on the Moon. The idea is that such colonies on Earth's natural satellite will help manage and support the first astronaut landing on Mars. At the same time, SpaceX CEO Elon Musk has his own ideas. He wants to send uncrewed missions to Mars as soon as the end of 2026. In the meantime, Perseverance has been busy. Its first assignment was exploring Jezero Crater, a site chosen because it once held water. After 3 years of work, the rover wrapped up its full survey of the crater. It happened in December 2024. NASA explained why this mattered. If Mars really went through long wet periods, Jezero's lake beds or shorelines could be some of the best places to look for fossilized signs of past life. Perseverance isn't alone either. 4 other rovers have reached Mars over the years. The very first, Sojourner, landed in July 1997. Then came Opportunity, which was expected to last just 3 months, but ended up operating for an incredible 15 years, until 2018. As for the bubbly rocks, scientists want to know more than just what they're made of. They're curious about where those rocks originally formed, and whether they lie in layers that could reveal how different materials build up over time. Studying their unusual makeup could tell researchers a lot about Mars's inner processes and how its environment shaped the planet's surface over billions of years. And maybe we could finally find out if there was life on the red planet. If you're scared of spiders, never ever visit Mars. In March 2025, NASA's Perseverance rover found something looking like a bunch of tiny spider eggs on the surface of the red planet. This something is made up of hundreds of little round balls stuck together. What if all these eggs hatch? Will hordes of 8-legged creatures swarm the red planet? Doubtful. The thing found by Perseverance was just sitting there on a hill called Witch Hazel, near the edge of Jezero Crater. On closer inspection, it turned out to be a weirdly shaped rock with a bit of Martian dust on it. Yeah, sadly, or luckily, those weren't Martian spider eggs. Even so, the formation really stood out from everything else around it. The Perseverance team named the weird rock St. Paul's Bay. It's what scientists call a float rock. This term means that it didn't form where it was found, but somehow got moved there. So, at the moment, we don't have enough clues to figure out its background and how it got that strange texture. But that's not the only mystery. Something had to move this rock from its original spot. One theory claims that the rock could have been created when a meteorite smashed into Mars. The powerful impact must have blasted rocks into the air, and those bits could have cooled down and formed the tiny balls we see now. If that's true, this rock might have come from really far away, and it could give us new info on how big impacts move stuff around on the red planet. NASA thinks the rock might have just rolled down Witch Hazel Hill. It could have come from one of the darker layers up on the hill. We have seen those layers from space. Now, the goal is to study Witch Hazel Hill more closely and find out if those layers are made of the same stuff as the St. Paul's Bay rock. If so, it might mean a few things. Maybe there was volcanic activity in that region, or a big meteor hit, or there might have been groundwater there in the past. If this theory turns out to be true, there's a chance that some of those rocks might hold tiny fossils from ancient microbes. That's why NASA is planning to bring some of the rocks back to Earth in the 2030s with the Mars Sample Return mission. We'll get to study them up close and maybe, just maybe, find signs of ancient Martian life. Now, the funniest thing about it all is that it isn't the first time scientists have dealt with arachnids on Mars. Spiders on Mars is actually the nickname for a weird-looking surface feature. In certain places on Mars, you can see big dark cracks that spread out like spider legs. Some are huge, over 3,000 feet wide. From above, they seriously look like a bunch of creepy crawlers moving across the planet. These spooky shapes were first spotted by Mars orbiters in 2003. and they've been showing up in satellite photos ever since. At first, no one had a clue what they were, but now, scientists think they form when carbon dioxide ice, dry ice, sitting on the surface, suddenly turns straight into gas. That fast change causes gas to shoot through the ice and carve out all those strange crackly patterns. An even cooler thing is that NASA scientists have been able to recreate those Mars spiders in the lab here on Earth. They built a special setup mimicking Mars's surface and watched tiny versions of the spiders form right in front of their eyes. The team had been trying to recreate those Mars spiders for 5 years. When it finally happened, they were overjoyed. Back in 2021, scientists managed to explain how those spider-like marks form on Mars using something called the Kiefer model. The basic idea is that in spring, sunlight shines through big, clear chunks of frozen carbon dioxide, aka dry ice. That heats the Martian ground underneath, and the ice starts turning straight into gas. The gas builds up under the ice, and when the pressure gets too intense, boom, the ice cracks. Gas shoots out, dragging dark sand and dust with it, leaving behind those spooky spider patterns once the ice melts in summer. The team tested this theory using a big special chamber nicknamed Dusty. Yeah, that's a real name. It's about the size of a barrel and can recreate the freezing cold, super low pressure conditions on Mars. We're talking about -301 degrees Fahrenheit. The researchers also put fake Martian soil in the chamber and covered it with CO2 ice. Then they used a lamp underneath the soil to heat it up, just like the sun heats up Mars. Their experiments worked, and little spider shapes formed just like they do on the red planet. The study also revealed something new. The team found that ice formed inside the ground too, and it caused the soil to crack along with the ice. This might explain why the spider's legs are so zigzagged instead of straight, like we might expect. Next, they want to keep doing experiments to figure out more about the Martian spiders, like why they only show up in some places on Mars and why they aren't getting more common over time. The red planet is apparently set on playing tricks on people from Earth. For example, in April 2023, NASA's Curiosity rover took a little break from searching for signs of ancient water on Mars and stumbled upon something curious: a travel book. Later, scientists realized that it wasn't really a book, just a rock. But it does look like a little hardcover with a page frozen mid-turn. This book rock is tiny, measuring only about 1 inch wide. So it might not hold any ancient Martian stories, but at least it's travel size. Then in January 2023, the University of Arizona shared another bizarre image: a rock formation that looked like the face of a giant teddy bear. It had 2 distinct beady eyes, a button nose, and an upturned mouth. It was captured by NASA's Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, which was orbiting the red planet at the time. Scientists from the University of Arizona explained that the teddy bear face was likely just a natural formation, like a broken-up hill or mound in the center of an ancient crater. Another cool find occurred in February 2022. The Curiosity rover spotted something that could only be described as a tiny flower made of minerals. It looks like little coral branches, but it's actually a mineral deposit, which is pretty rare to see in a flower-like shape. Most of these kinds of deposits are formed when ancient water mixes with rocks on the Martian surface, so they're not exactly new to scientists. But this one is unique, since it looks like a tiny plant or flower. Now, the next discovery is even wilder. Once, the Curiosity rover snapped a pic of what looked like a perfect doorway in a Martian cliff. Naturally, people started wondering if it was some kind of secret entrance or maybe a hidden base for astronauts. But in reality, it's just a really cool rock formation. Winds and erosion carved away at the rock over time, creating a perfect symmetrical shape. Going even deeper into the past, back in 2018, a researcher noticed weird stick-like shapes in an image and thought they looked like fossilized animal footprints. Unfortunately, NASA quickly shot down the idea. Those tracks turned out to be salt deposits that formed in areas where water evaporated. You can find something similar on Earth too, for example, in dry lake beds. So, while it's pretty interesting that there's more proof that Mars used to have rivers and lakes, these tracks aren't evidence of life, just a quirky rock formation. Now, the next find is absolutely amazing. NASA's Opportunity rover found round, blueberry-like rocks on Mars back in 2004. But those aren't the kind you eat with your cereal. The blueberries you're looking at are made of iron, and they're evidence that Mars used to have a lot of water. Over billions of years, water smoothed them out and created these little balls. Scientists think that they formed when Mars was much wetter than it is now. The iron-rich blueberries are a pretty big deal because they show that Mars could have been a very different place a long time ago.